Hello, my book butterflies, and welcome to episode 3 of the Main Chapter podcast. My name is Brianna, and I'm so excited to be sharing this episode with you as I'm talking all about hockey romance with USA Today bestselling author Kat Mizera. We talk all about romance as a whole, her new book, The Penalty Kiss, some things she has coming up this year, heated rivalry, fan casting, all the fun stuff. A super great and conversational interview. This interview does include some light spoilers for The Penalty Kiss if you haven't read it already, but I think if you listen, it won't be anything too crazy. Also, before we get started, please hit that like and subscribe button so we can continue growing and sharing our love of books with everyone. Thank you everyone for your support so far, and let's go ahead and get started with Kat.
Saw on your website that you started as a sports or not a sports writer freelance, and now you're a romance author. How did you get into romance writing?
I've always been a writer, a romance writer, a freelance writer. I was in sports and entertainment in the late 80s and early 90s. And it was sort of a natural progression. My husband plays hockey. He's played
Oh,
hockey
wow.
since he was 3 years old, not professionally, but through college. He coached at the junior college level, and we're a big hockey family. So I thought, well, I should write something I know, and hockey is something I know. And so that's sort of how I fell into it.
That's so fun. I feel like hockey really dominates the sports romance genre. If you pick up any sports romance book, I feel like 8 out of 10 times it's hockey. And hockey is really having its moment right now, both like just in general with the Olympics and it's in season, but also I think hockey romances as well. Why do you think that is?
I always get asked this question, and I'm really not sure what it is about hockey players, at least fictional hockey players,
Mhm.
that are so much sexier than the other sports. For some,
Right.
when it comes to romance, they are. You don't see nearly as many football or baseball romances. You do see quite a few rugby.
That
And
is
that's
true.
another one. That's another one that I can't quite put my finger on what's so sexy about rugby. Um, part of it, I think, is that, hockey is like almost like two sports in one, because there's the sport of getting the puck in the net, scoring the goals, but there's also the ice skating part, which is almost it's a sport in and of itself. And, despite the roughness of the sport, there's an elegance to ice skating. And I think there's something sexy about that.
That's true. That's true. I'm not even a huge hockey watcher, but I do love a hockey romance book. And you're right, it is such a complex sport that I feel like I should appreciate it more outside of the pages. And I've been reading through all your books. You have over 100 titles published, which is so impressive. And I was wondering, what is your process like, and how are you able to get your books out?
Well, I mean, this might sound a little snarky, and it certainly is not meant to be, but I treat this like I would treat any other job. I get
Right.
up in the morning, I get my coffee, and I get to my desk and I work. I put in 40, 50, 60 hours a week. Yes, I do it from home. Yes, I could do it in my pajamas, but it's not like, oh, I just write a few couple hours here and there. I write or I work all day, every day, just like it's a regular job. And I think that's part of it. Um, there are tips and tricks to when you get writer's block, which is inevitable. You absolutely have to take breaks. But if you treat it like it's a serious business, it is.
It is. It is definitely. And I'm sure you're no stranger to book talk and book TikTok, Bookstagram, BookTube, all of them. And I feel like the romance genre definitely dominates those online spaces. And we're always seeing these types of questions and debates come out. And one thing that's been popping up on my For You page a lot is people talking about the shift in the romance publishing industry, how books are being published a lot more quickly, and people sometimes challenge what this means for quality or creativity or how people engage with readers. I think a lot of people are way too harsh when it comes to this subject, and we're always seeing readers go back and forth. Feel like we rarely see authors give their opinions and their input. And as someone who has written so many titles, I wonder what's your opinions on these types of debates?
You know, Everyone has a different they have a different ability. Some people can sit down at their desk and just do it. Other people just simply cannot. I have writer friends who put out one book a year, but they spend 40 hours a week working on advertising and promoting their backlist.
Right.
because they enjoy it. I don't love that so much. For me, that's not the creative part. For me, coming up with the stories, writing the books, throwing them out there. I have so many ideas and characters in my head. If I only put out one book a year, I'll be writing until I'm 290. So, for me personally, I need to just get them out there. I have I have a pretty intensive process as far as they go through a developmental editor, they go through a copy editor, they go through a proofreader. So, as far as quality goes, I, I feel like I put out a good quality. You know, my developmental editor will not let me put out a book if she thinks it's subpar. She'll tell me. It happened in December. I had knee replacement surgery, and I had really been rushing to finish the book before my surgery. And so when she sent it back to me, she's like, "You need to call me. We need to talk. You obviously rushed through this book." And we did, and I had to rewrite part of it.
Yeah.
So, quality, that's not a debate I'm going to have with anyone because I do my best to put out the best quality I possibly can.
Right. And I just spent the last few days reading your latest book, The Penalty Kiss, and I could tell they're like really it did go through all those stages. There weren't any typos. I didn't have any questions in my head of like, wait, where are there any plot holes or anything? So I thought it was really well done. And it's something that I definitely want to talk about. I have some questions here. So I really like how Jane and Bodhi, we truly saw who they were as people, but also as lovers. I felt like I had a full picture of both of them in my head. One of my favorite things about Jane was that she would write these letters to Bodhi. It was easier for her to express her emotions that way. And I'm really curious, what inspired you when writing these characters?
Well, Bodhi, if you read the book, you heard him talking about his sister Billy. So
Right.
my last book was the final book in my previous series, The LA Phantoms. And so we saw a gruffer, less mature side of Bodhi where he was just out of his mind being overprotective with his sister. And so I really wanted this book to be his redemption. You know, off the page, he spent the off season in therapy. He
Mhm.
promised his sister that he would do that, and he did. And one of the things that he was struggling with was the therapist suggested writing in a journal, and he was struggling with that part of it. And so I thought it was fun. Jane being a librarian, she would write him letters, and in a subtle way, it would encourage him to get into the journaling. And they that trip they take to the stationery store where they go shopping together. You know, I think that's kind of fun. Like that would be something totally fun that my husband and I might do. Maybe not after 30 years, but early in our relationship, it's something that we might have done.
Yes, actually, that stationery store was in the Avalon, correct?
Yes.
Yes, I grew up in Georgia for 18
Oh,
years before going to LA for school and kind of staying out there, but I would go back and visit until my parents just moved to Florida a couple years ago. So I felt very nostalgic when reading this
oh,
book because
good.
I was in Kennesaw, so close enough to like Alpharetta and some of the areas you mentioned. So it was very familiar, and it's rare that you see Atlanta, the location in a romance book. So that was really fun for me. One scene that also really stood out is I really liked that scene after a game when they were in the friends and family room and Jane and Bodhi really couldn't communicate without giving away their relationship. It really highlighted this forbidden romance trope. And I was wondering, how do you go about writing these scenes that have a little bit more angst to them?
Um, I try to think of something that would impact me. So if I were Jane and I was in that room, not unable to really truly communicate with this guy that I'm falling in love with, I try to pull how I would feel as far as the angst goes,
Yeah.
and throw that into the scene.
Right. And I feel like Jane and Bodhi, they both had to grow up really early with Jane losing her mom and Bodhi losing both of their parents. I think them almost having this shared trauma is really what helped them become compatible and meld together. When you're developing your characters, what goes through your mind to kind of make sure that they'll be a good match?
So not always, but I would say 80% of the time, I start dreaming up who's gonna be with who much earlier, right?
Mhm.
So it's not like okay, I'm gonna sit down now. Bodhi's the guy, who's the girl? I've already had something in my mind for a long time because like I got to know Bodhi in the last book,
Right.
as a side character, and I knew that he needed somebody that was going to understand his trauma. And who better to understand his trauma than someone who's gone through something similar, And for example, Victor. Victor is one of the roommates, and he's going to have a book coming up. Not the next one. The next book is West, but either book 3 or 4 is going to be Victor. And I already know that he's going to have he needs somebody that's going to be soft and caring and sweet and loving. She's not going to be like a brash, aggressive modern woman. She's going to be someone a little softer because I already know that that's what Vic needs.
Right. I actually have questions about Vic and West because I loved both of those characters so much. So you talked about Victor, so we'll bring him up first. And I noticed that Kelly can speak in Russian and was able to communicate with him. And I was wondering if that could be any potential foreshadowing or if that was just kind of a nice little detail you wanted to throw in there.
Well, something that because you're like the third person to mention that to me. And so I guess I I only mentioned it in one line, but Kelly is in her 50s.
Right.
So I really don't know about a romance. I could. I've done older women and younger men,
Yeah.
but Vic is like 27 and Kelly's in her 50s. I don't know about a 30
Yeah.
age gap. She's going to continue to be around as a friend of the family and she's going to be really integral in Lindy's life, Jane's little sister.
Mm.
So Kelly isn't going anywhere, and I think she's going to take on more of a big sister role for Victor.
Right. I was like, it definitely would be an age gap relationship. I was like, it's been done before, so I didn't want to rule it out completely, but I wanted to ask because I was like, oh, my brain caught on that detail. And it's interesting other people brought on it too,
Yeah,
but
other
definitely
people did.
loved her character. Felt she was so fun, so nurturing. I also really did love Wes. The Kindle version of the book went ahead and gave a little sneak peek of his book coming up and seeing his first interaction with Serena. And I was wondering if there was anything you could tease about Wes that we don't necessarily see in the penalty kiss.
Okay, so again, West was a side character in a co-written series that I wrote with my friend Elise Faber, the Game Breakers. In the final book, the heroine of that story is dating West, and she's a single mom. She has a little girl, and her daughter's father has never been in the picture, and she and West have just started getting serious, and her daughter's father reappears and she goes back to him. There's a lot of backstory. And West is such a good guy about it because I don't want to give everything away.
Yeah.
There are some real extenuating circumstances, things that you absolutely can't be mad about. He
Right.
left for a very good reason. And so West sees that and he lets her go without making her feel bad, even though his heart is broken. So now he meets a single mom who's a redhead to boot, and he's like, oh, heck no, I am not going there. But
Right.
fate may have other plans.
I have other plans. And I loved that last line where he was done being someone's Prince Charming. So I'm definitely interested to see how that arc is going to go. So obviously, this penalty kiss starts the next series, Puck and Penalties. What are you hoping to really bring to life with these next few books?
Well, one recurring theme in all of my books is found family. These guys, yes, they play hockey, but the teams that I build become family. And that's going to be, you see a little bit of it with the 4 guys, 5 guys living together
Mm,
in West's house.
yeah.
And going forward, I'm also trying to, I'm going to create a sense of big city hockey in a small town because they're in the suburbs, they're off the beaten path. Peachtree Heights is a fictional town, it does not exist in
Yeah.
Georgia. Um, and they're going to be like in their own little cocoon,
Yeah.
Tell you a little secret. Jane is going to open a bookstore
Oh.
and Kelly is going to, still be involved. And Serena cooks. So that's a little hint of things to come. Um, and that's what we're going to feel. We're going to feel like a small town set in this big city hockey set in a small town.
That's a little bit of small town romance, but not completely. And I'm excited to hear that Serena cooks because we heard so much about how talented of a cook Wes is. So
So
we'll
those
be
two are going to
able.
be cooking a lot together.
Oh, I'm excited. I'm excited. And I was always wondering, especially when you develop your characters, fan casting is something that always comes up. So I was wondering, do you picture anyone specific in your head when you're writing your characters? And was there anyone specific that you had in mind for these characters we've mentioned?
I really don't. In my head, right now, heated rivalry is a really big deal. Connor Story, who plays Ilya, that's a little bit of what Bodhi looks like with the curly blonde hair.
Oh,
That's a little bit. West is a much bigger guy. He's 6'4", 225. So he's a big guy. Hollywood doesn't have a lot of really big guys. You have your Jason Momoa and The Rock, and there's a handful of really big guys. But it's difficult because a lot of Hollywood are just average size. They appear bigger than life on screen, and they're fantastic actors. But with when you're envisioning a pro athlete, I can't look at some guy who's 5'8". I can't look at Tom Holland, whom I adore. He is one of my very favorites, but he's like 5'7" and 150 pounds. He's not a hockey player. He's tons of other fantasies, but he's not a hockey player fantasy. And so I have not found too many that fit the bill for my guys.
that's so funny you brought up heated rivalry in Connor's story because I guess my imagination doesn't run that far because I just had assigned him to Vic because I was like, oh, Russian accent. I can already hear it in my head. I don't have to play with it. And then for Bodhi, I'm always so bad when it comes to a blonde-haired, blue-eyed MMC. I really struggle. So I feel like my default is Austin Butler. So I had Austin Butler as my Bodhi, just like a little taller and a little more muscle. And then I
Yeah.
feel like then I just look up what actual hockey players look like and try to find him. Because for West, I'm trying to think I always forget his name, but he's on the New York team and everyone loves him and his fan cast him in a bunch of hockey players. I'll probably insert a
On
picture
the
of him.
Rangers
It's
or
or
the Islanders, because there's two.
Islanders. The
Oh, the
Islanders, yes.
Islanders. That's not my team, so I
Uh,
don't know all of them. I'm trying to think who everybody loves on the Islanders.
Let me see. Let me see if I can look it up. Matthew Barzal, Matt Barzal.
Barzal.
He,
Okay, yeah.
I picture him a lot too, but he's like the one hockey player I know.
There's a few like Victor Hedman, who plays for the Tampa Bay Lightning. He's 6'5", 6'6", blonde hair, blue-eyed Swede, very handsome,
Oh.
and he's a big boy as well. So, I fantasize a little bit about him when I'm coming up with my guys.
I'll have to look him up.
Yeah. Yeah. There's
Yeah.
there's some really handsome
Mhm.
men in the NHL. They're not,
Oh,
that's not what they're known for, but they exist.
I believe it. I believe it. And so we're talking about hockey, and you brought up heated rivalry, and I couldn't help myself but have that brought up in a conversation. So have you watched heated rivalry, and what are your thoughts on it?
I have not watched it yet because I was waiting until I had my surgery.
That's fair. Mhm.
And when I had my surgery, it turns out that um, we used to get HBO Max through our AT&T service, and they stopped making it a part of it.
Oh,
So we didn't have it. And I was annoyed at first. And then I was like, you know what? I'm not watching it. That's it. I'm not watching it. But now I'm like, that's stupid. So we're going to add HBO Max and I'm going to watch it because I can't stand it that I haven't seen it yet. I've seen
yes.
every clip, I've seen every review, I've seen so much talk about it. So it's time.
You can also get it through YouTube TV if you do a free trial with them. But that's how I've been watching it. I have one episode left. I feel like I'm so late to the game, but I had a coworker who was watching it like as it was coming out, and it's all she talks about. She posts Heated Rivalry like 10 times a day. So I finally was like, let me go ahead and watch it. And I'll be honest, it took me a couple episodes to get into it. But then like episode three changed everything for me. And I was like, okay, I can see the hype now. So I hope you'll enjoy it as well. And so I have some other fun questions here. So you like to categorize your books by tropes, as I saw on your website. So I was wondering, do you have a favorite trope to write?
I really love the single dad trope.
Okay.
I don't have one coming up immediately because I've written a few. One of my best-selling books ever, Defending Danny, which is book one of the Alaska Blizzard series. He's a single dad, and she's the nanny. She is an Olympic hockey player as well. He's also widowed. I love, love, love the single dads, like the things that they go through. Because single mom, as a mom, even though it's not accurate, I feel like it's just so this is what we do. We are the moms, we are the nurturers. This is just it. It's very commonplace, even though that's a terrible thing to say. Um, but single dads are a whole different thing. And when you add a pro hockey player who's constantly traveling and needing to count on nannies and family and friends and whatever, I think that adds a whole level of intricacy to the story.
He does. I read my first single dad trope book last year in the City series, Caught Up, and that was really fun. I feel like my world was open to the single dad trope. On the other end, do you have a trope that you think is actually the hardest to write that not a lot of people talk about?
Um, I think the fake relationship is really tough to write because I think it's hard because you know that they are going to end up together. So framing it in the beginning like they don't like each other, they don't want to be together, I find that really tough. I really have to sit down and plot out some thoughts on how to keep them from immediately just finding their way to each other.
Exactly. Fake dating and fake relations is actually my favorite tropes. I found it interesting you said that, but I can't imagine that it would be hard to write to make it look like there's a reason for that chemistry to emerge. And so we had talked about book talk a little earlier, and I know you promote your own books on book talk. Have you seen any recommendations or books that you really love from any TikTok or online space?
Honestly, lately I have stayed off of social media, but my knee replacement was just it's been 7 weeks and it
Oh my
has been
gosh.
such a hard recovery. I am, at the end of the day, I am wiped. And that's so weird to say,
Yes.
excuse me, because it's just your knee. At 7 weeks, you should just be done. But I don't do nearly the scrolling I used to do. So I'm a little behind right now. I just haven't had the energy to be on social media. At the end of the day, I just want to be a zombie in front of the TV and ice my knee.
That's fair. I'm so sorry your knee surgery has been taking or recovery has been taking longer than
Well,
expected. That's the worst.
in the end, it'll be worth it, but short term, it takes a while.
Exactly, exactly. I'm a slow healer, so I feel like after every surgery I've ever had, it takes me double the time, they say. So I understand how you're feeling, and I know it is not fun. So praying that you have a quick recovery or quicker recovery and things start to get better.
Thank you.
Of course. So my last question for you is I know you've said that you're not really on social media right now, but you are writing and you are working. I was wondering, do you think there will be any interesting trends in the romance industry or romance genre this year that we as readers should look out for?
I think the romance industry is in a period of flux right now. A lot of things are changing. The economy is not that great. We've noticed attendance at in-person events is down a little bit. So I think this year people are really going to lean into subscription models like KU, Kobo Plus, things like that. I really do think that that is what's coming.
Interesting. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Makes sense. Well, thank you so much. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you want to share or bring up to any of the listeners or viewers?
Just that the next book in my series is Chasing Love. That is West and Serena's story. That is coming out in April. And I also, if I do a lot of in-person events, I'm going to be in Phoenix this weekend at Wild and Windy West. Um, if anyone out there is around, that would be great. Come say hello. But I'm also creating special editions that have full color chapter headings and foil on the front cover and lots of pretties out there. So if
That's
you run into me anywhere, look for the pretties.
Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to look out for Kat's new work and read The Penalty Kiss if you haven't already. Next week, we are working on our inner selves. I'm interviewing Lauren Courtney, a best-selling author, with her book Glow Up Your Chakras, From Medicated to Meditated. We're going to talk about energy, healing, Reiki, how we can really improve ourselves in 2026. I'm excited. You should be too. And I hope you have a great week, my book butterflies. Until next time.